for the chance to see a beautiful city once again. There are three things I want you to take from my presentation. One is that we are this close to polio eradication. We're very much the closest we've ever been, with the best progress so far that we've seen in years. The second is that we do have a rare problem with vaccine-derived polioviruses. That is a problem that needs to be addressed. And the third part is that we are starting to address it by phasing out oral polio vaccines. Polio, we know it's a very serious illness, and this is from the 1950s, before the vaccines were derived. Success that occurred with the smallpox eradication program, there was tremendous impetus to address another serious illness. The first time in history, man was successful in fighting against an infectious disease, smallpox. And so in 1988, with the successes in the Americas, the World Health Assembly resolved to eradicate polio by the year 2000. This was a fundamental partnership of all ministries of health and major partners who are technical and financial partners. The World Health Organization. A little bit of a word about the poliovirus itself. There are three important things to remember. There are three serotypes, each with a different characteristic. Types 1, 2, and 3. Belong to an enterovirus family that has the capacity for mutation, about 1% per year in its genome. The third thing to remember is that infection with this virus leads to paralysis rarely. In fact, for type 1, paralysis occurs for every 200 infections. For type 2, paralysis occurs for every 2,000 infections in susceptible children. So it's a rare outcome. How did we get to where we are? With four different strategies. Strengthening routine childhood immunization. And in areas where childhood immunization is weak or was not sufficiently effective in giving vaccines to prevent polio, there are national campaigns. 3 doses are not enough in the developing world to prevent polio because of malnutrition and competing enteric diseases. So mass campaigns were necessary and are necessary to interrupt the transmission of poliovirus. Supplementary immunization activities, SIAs. There's a specific type of SIA called mop-up, when you focus on local areas, going house to house, looking for recently infected children, and circling suspect cases with intense vaccination. The fourth component, which is very important, is surveillance. And the surveillance has 2 components. Looking for all paralyzed children, children with new onset paralysis, and then testing specimens from those children for polioviruses. This testing is incredibly important because when polioviruses are found, they are then characterized and analyzed, sequenced, to look at the genetic characteristics. This genomic sequencing gives us powerful information about where the viruses have been transmitting, and in the case of CDPVs, how long they've been transmitted. When the resolution of the World Health Assembly was made, there were about 350,000 estimated cases per year. There's been a 99% drop by the year 2000. Successive areas have become polio-free. The Western Pacific region in 1991, and the Western Hemisphere, in 1991. The Western Pacific region in the year 2000 was declared polio-free, and the European region in 2002. Notably, on that slide, was the last case of type 2 wild poliovirus in 1999. Now, in the last decade, there's been less. In fact, there was a decade of apparent stagnation, but it was a really a decade of innovation, where different techniques were used to try and tackle poliovirus infections as they occurred. Success was so dramatic that there was a new plan for eradication by the year 2012. But in the year 2011, the actual number of cases was lower worldwide, but was increased in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria. Next slide. This led an independent monitoring board to indicate that despite the progress, we weren't on track to eradicate by the year 2012, and in fact, anytime soon thereafter, because of the organization of the eradication movement. So fundamental problems needed to be tackled. Next slide. That led to an emergency declaration and changed procedures within our partners, particularly WHO and UNICEF, to be more quick and responsive to emergencies. And for CDC, it meant that we activated an emergency operations center where we could put all our resources to bear in fighting polio. The World Health Assembly and the Executive Board of the World Health Assembly declared polio eradication a programmatic emergency for global public health, meaning that we had to interrupt polio. It was now no longer a hobby, it was an emergency, where failure was not considered an option. This slide just shows that when Nigeria had a ban on polio vaccination, boycott, 2003-2004, immediately thereafter, poliovirus easily spread to neighboring countries and marched across West and East Africa. And if we didn't succeed in polio eradication, we'd effectively end up with 200,000 cases again every year. So failure is not an option. Because of the size of the countries, India and Nigeria, and the intense transmissions that were occurring in those countries, they shared their virus very easily. And all these arrows indicate when transmission occurred more than once from Nigeria, sometimes long distance from India, and a couple of times now in more recent years from Pakistan, 2011 to China, 2013 to Syria. These long distance and short distance importations were a particular problem, so that even though the number of countries where polio had never been interrupted decreased and got down to 4 countries by the year 2006, the number of countries that had outbreaks was actually increasing because of the continued disease in these endemic countries. The intense circulation in India was due to several problems. Not only was it due to the vaccines not being as effective as in other locations because of malnutrition and enteric pathogens, but they had particular challenges to address. But refusal by the community and some minority populations. They had a highly mobile worker population to attenuate and modify the characteristics of the virus, domesticated the virus. However, the virus still had the ability to pass person to person, just not as well as wild virus. Markedly reduced ability to cause paralysis, but induced the antibody protection that's necessary to give us the vaccine, including secretory antibody in the intestinal tract and pharynx. However, attenuation is not entirely stable. It's a very safe vaccine. We know that on rare occasions we can have vaccine-acquired paralytic polio, but also when we have very susceptible communities, we can have vaccine-derived polioviruses. So reversion back to a feral state. Definitions of what constitutes a vaccine-derived poliovirus. And it's based on the genomic analysis and how many changes there have occurred from the state of vaccine. For types 1 and 3, requires 10 nucleotides changes over a 900 nucleotide sequence that codes for the VP1 surface protein. For type 2, with fewer attenuating mutations from wild to vaccine, its reversion is easier. And so, with only 6 nucleotides, we call the vaccine-derived poliovirus, the poliovirus that's found, vaccine-derived poliovirus, it can be associated with paralysis. Viruses that are less divergent naturally are found following vaccination because the virus, as it passes from child to child, is not stable, but with fewer nucleotide changes, is essentially still a safe poliovirus and vaccine-related. There are 3 types of identified polioviruses. In an immune-deficient individual that cannot mount an adequate immune response, the virus can continue to replicate, and it's associated with either constant excretion with or without paralysis. Circulating derived polioviruses are due to low population immunity and represent an outbreak, circulation of changed virus that is wild-like. The third type of poliovirus is when you isolate a single case of a vaccine-derived poliovirus, either from a child with AMP or finding it in sewage, and you're not sure the actual origin or whether this virus is in wide circulation. How do polioviruses revert? Even though the vaccine is extremely safe, the viruses do transmit from person to person. This is an advantage for the vaccine, to vaccinate children indirectly that don't receive the vaccine. And in a naive child, the vaccine can be excreted for 4 to 6 weeks, up to 8 weeks. During replication, there are changes in an individual, but more importantly, there are changes that occur when it circulates within the community, person to person, so that it's the replication over a long period of time that leads to the mutations that cause the vaccine-derived poliovirus, either in an immune-deficient individual, as we discussed, or with prolonged replication in a community. Let me just give an illustration. If we consider the black subjects here in this slide to be susceptible individuals, the green represent immune individuals, and the red is a recently vaccinated individual. The vaccine virus from the red person can only go so far because the community is highly vaccinated, highly immune, and the transmission to susceptible individuals is limited. Next slide. But if there is a highly susceptible population, low vaccine coverage, there are more susceptible individuals that allow the transmission to occur from person to person to person. And it's in this prolonged transmission that the virus becomes changed and becomes wild-like. Next slide, please. The only way to know that you have a vaccine-derived poliovirus is through this laboratory examination and sequencing the VP1 coding sequence, and looking at the number of changes from what occurs in saved virus. Next slide. Now, what makes a circulating vaccine poliovirus definition of an outbreak? What's the outbreak? Well, if you have a single case of a vaccine-derived poliovirus, but you have evidence of circulation either in the sewage from that community or in healthy individuals within that community, that's evidence of circulation and the definition of an outbreak. If you have more than one case, that's the definition of an outbreak, as was the case within Ukraine. CDPVs are biologically equivalent and cause paralysis just like wild viruses. They also behave just like wild viruses in that there are some percent of individuals with paralysis that recover, perhaps up to 15% with wild virus, the same with vaccine-derived polioviruses. Type 2, because of the easier reversion of type 2 polioviruses, are the most common that we've seen in VDPV outbreaks. Next slide, please. Now, I've said that this occasion is rare. There have been less than 30 outbreaks since the year 2000 in all of the world that we've identified. This slide shows the number of cases in outbreaks that have occurred by type 1 in red, type 2 in green, type 3 in blue. And you can see there rarely have been outbreaks of type 3 poliovirus, vaccine-derived poliovirus outbreaks. The most common has been type 2, and of the large number of cases that have occurred from the year 2000, almost 90% are type 2, and if you look just from the year 2005 on, more than 95%. It's only in this last year that we've found type 1 outbreaks again, not only in Ukraine, but in 2 other locations. Now these number of cases include a large outbreak that occurred with many, many different emergences of type 2 in Nigeria. Almost 500 cases. What is the circumstance of leading to VDPVs? Low immunity, low vaccination coverage, high population density and high population number of births is also a contributing factor. And it's particularly important if you have low vaccine coverage in an isolated community. So even in China, where vaccination coverage is extremely high, they have VDPV outbreaks that occur in isolated communities where coverage is a little bit less important. How are we addressing the problems of VDPVs? This rare problem, but this real problem. The polio eradication endgame and strategic plan for 2013 to 2018 had several objectives. The first objective, of course, to eradicate polio. Objective 3 was to certify that eradication and contain viruses in laboratories. The second objective was to start the process of phasing out oral polio vaccines, starting with type 2. So this is the switch which will be discussed in more detail tomorrow, switching from trivalent vaccine to bivalent vaccine in all uses, routine vaccination as well as in any campaigns. If there are any type 2 outbreaks that occur after the switch, they'll be addressed using monovalent type 2 vaccine. And with this switch, we've also had the introduction of inactivated poliovirus vaccines, IPV, in the 126 countries around the world that were not using IPV before. And this addition of IPV is almost complete, but has been delayed due to IPV shortages in some countries. Nonetheless, even with these shortages, the switch still will occur. Next slide, please. And in a coordinated fashion, the world is going to stop using trivalent vaccine. Type 1, 2, and 3 and the drops will no longer be given, but only types 1 and 3, bivalent vaccine. The type 2 immunity will be given by injection with IPV, at least a single dose throughout the world, and in many places such as Ukraine, more than one dose. This slide just indicates the number of countries that were using OPV, some with IPV, that are undergoing the switch. About 150 countries are undertaking the switch within a 2-week period of time, inshallah. For those of you who know Arabic. That's God willing. So this is the beginning of the phasing out of oral poliovirus vaccines. Once polio eradication is complete, we'll start phasing out bivalent vaccine as well and lead to just vaccination with IPV in a polio-free world. Next slide, please. So we really are this close to polio eradication, and we're this close on the path to eradicating vaccine-derived poliovirus outbreaks as well. Thank you very much.